The school bus stopped in front of Maple Ridge Community Center just as the rain began to fall harder, and before 17-year-old Marcus Reed could even step onto the sidewalk, a woman in a red coat pointed at him and shouted, "No, not him. He is not coming inside with our children." Everyone froze. Marcus stood there with his backpack over one shoulder, his debate team jacket wet from the rain, and the gold medal from last week's regional competition still hanging from his zipper. He looked behind him, thinking maybe she was pointing at someone else, but there was nobody there except the bus driver and 3 students staring at him with wide eyes. The woman stepped closer, blocking the entrance with her umbrella. "I saw him near the parking lot last month," she said loudly. "Kids like him bring trouble. This is a scholarship interview, not a street corner." Marcus did not answer. He just held the folder tighter in his hand. Inside that folder was the speech he had practiced for 3 weeks. Inside that folder was his mother's pay stub, his grades, his volunteer hours, and a letter from his principal saying he was one of the strongest students their school had ever sent to the Bright Future Scholarship panel. But in that moment, none of it mattered to the woman in the red coat. To her, Marcus was already guilty of something. The security guard near the door looked uncomfortable. "Ma'am, he's on the list," he said. "I don't care what list he is on," she snapped. "My daughter is interviewing today. I will not let this place become unsafe." The rain hit Marcus's face, but he did not move. His mother had told him that morning, "Son, when people try to make you feel small, stand tall enough that they get tired looking up." So Marcus stood tall. The woman turned toward the people gathering near the entrance. "Somebody call the director. I want him checked before he goes in." A few parents whispered. One man pulled his young son closer. Another woman looked at Marcus like he was a stain on the sidewalk. Then, a little girl, maybe 7 years old, stepped out from behind the glass doors. She wore a blue dress and had a pink cast on her arm. She stared at Marcus for a long second. Then she smiled. "Mom," the little girl said, tugging the red coat woman's sleeve. "That's him." The woman looked down, annoyed. "Go back inside, Emily." "No," the girl said, louder now. "That's the boy who helped me." The crowd went quiet. Marcus looked at the girl carefully. He had seen her before, but only for a few seconds. Last month, after debate practice, he had been walking past the community center when he heard crying near the side parking lot. A little girl had fallen from her bike, her arm twisted badly under her. There had been no adult nearby, no parent in sight, just a child screaming in pain while cars drove past in the rain. Marcus had dropped his bag, called 911, wrapped his hoodie under her arm, and stayed beside her until the ambulance arrived. When the paramedics asked his name, he only said, "Marcus," because he was late for his night shift at the grocery store. He never knew the girl's name. Now she was standing in front of him. Emily pointed at Marcus. "He didn't scare me. He saved me." The woman's face changed, but only for a second. Pride fought with shame in her eyes. "Emily, honey, you were confused. That was a different boy." "No, Mom," Emily said. "It was him. He gave me his hoodie. You washed it and said we should find him." The security guard looked at the woman. The parents stopped whispering. Marcus still said nothing. Then the main doors opened, and an older black man in a gray suit walked outside. He carried a clipboard and wore a name badge that said Director Harris. "What is happening here?" he asked. The woman quickly pointed at Marcus. This young man was trying to enter without proper screening. Director Harris looked at Marcus, then at the wet folder in his hand. "Name, Marcus Reed." "Sir." The director checked the clipboard. Then he looked up slowly. "Marcus Reed is not only on the list. He is our top finalist." A low murmur moved through the crowd. The woman's lips parted, but no words came out. Director Harris continued. "He has a 4.0 GPA, 2 jobs, debate awards, community service hours, and a recommendation letter from every teacher who has worked with him. So unless rain has become a security threat, I suggest we let him inside." Somebody laughed quietly. The woman looked down, but Marcus still did not move. Director Harris stepped closer. "Are you okay, son?" Marcus took a breath. His voice was calm, but it carried through the rain. "I am okay, sir. I just want to know one thing before I go in." Everyone watched him. Marcus looked at the woman in the red coat. "If your daughter had not recognized me, would you have apologized? Or would you have let them search me in front of everyone?" The question hit harder than shouting. The woman's face turned pale. She opened her mouth, closed it, then looked at Emily. Emily's eyes were full of tears now. "Mom, say sorry." The woman swallowed. "I'm sorry," she whispered. Marcus shook his head gently. not to make yourself feel better. Say it because you understand what you did." The crowd was silent. The woman looked at him again, and this time her voice broke. "I am sorry, Marcus. I judged you before I knew you. I made you stand in the rain like you didn't belong here. That was wrong." Marcus nodded once. Then Emily stepped forward and held out a folded navy blue hoodie. "I brought it today. Mom said we might find you." Marcus took it slowly. The hoodie smelled clean, like laundry soap and warm cotton. For the first time that morning, he smiled. Director Harris put a hand on Marcus's shoulder and guided him inside. "Come on, son. You have an interview to win." As Marcus walked through the doors, the same parents who had stepped away from him now moved aside with embarrassed faces. Some nodded. One man whispered, "Good luck." Marcus did not answer them. He kept walking. Inside the interview room, 5 judges sat at a long table. Marcus's shoes squeaked on the polished floor. His folder was wet at the edges. His hands were cold, but his voice was steady. The first judge asked, "Marcus, why do you deserve this scholarship?" Marcus looked through the glass doors at the hallway, where Emily was still holding her mother's hand. Then he turned back to the panel. "I don't know if deserve is the right word," he said. "I think I have worked for it. I think my mother has sacrificed for it. I think my teachers believed in me when life gave them every reason to expect less from me. But today reminded me of something important. Some people do not just walk into rooms. Some people have to prove they belong before they even reach the door." The judges leaned in. Marcus continued, "I want to become a lawyer, not because I like arguing, but because I know what it feels like to be accused before you are heard. I know what it feels like when people see your skin before they see your work. I want to stand for people who are tired of standing alone." No one interrupted him. His words were not loud, but they filled the room. When the interview ended, Director Harris walked him back to the lobby. The woman in the red coat was still there. She stood up when Marcus passed. "I told the scholarship committee what happened," she said quietly, "not to hurt your chances, to tell the truth." Marcus looked at her, surprised. She continued, "And I told Emily that being afraid is not an excuse to be unfair." Marcus nodded. "That is a good lesson." Emily stepped forward and gave him a small drawing. It showed a boy in a hoodie helping a girl beside a bicycle. At the top she had written, "My hero Marcus." Marcus looked at the paper for a long time. Then he carefully placed it inside his folder, above all the grades and awards. 2 weeks later, Marcus received a letter in the mail. His mother stood beside him in their small kitchen as he opened it. Her work uniform was still dusty from the factory. Her hands were shaking more than his. Marcus read the first line and stopped. His mother grabbed his arm. "Baby, what does it say?" Marcus tried to speak, but the words would not come. He handed her the letter. She read it out loud with tears in her eyes. "Dear Marcus Reed, congratulations. You have been selected as the Bright Future Scholarship winner." His mother covered her mouth. Marcus laughed and cried at the same time, and she pulled him into her arms so tightly that the letter almost fell to the floor. But there was one more page. Marcus picked it up and read it slowly. The scholarship committee had added a special note. "Your interview reminded this panel that courage is not only found in grand speeches. Sometimes courage is standing calmly in the rain while the world decides whether to see you clearly." Marcus sat down at the kitchen table. For years, people had told him to stay polite, stay careful, stay quiet, stay safe. But that day, he learned something different. Dignity did not mean accepting disrespect. Forgiveness did not mean pretending harm never happened. And proving himself did not mean he was the one who needed fixing. The next morning, Marcus returned to school wearing his old navy hoodie. His classmates cheered when they heard the news. His debate coach hugged him. His principal announced the scholarship over the loudspeaker. But Marcus kept thinking about Emily's drawing in his folder. A child had seen him clearly when adults refused to. And maybe that was the real lesson. Racism does not always arrive screaming. Sometimes it arrives wearing a red coat, holding an umbrella, speaking like fear is wisdom. Sometimes it stands at the door and asks good people to prove they are not dangerous. But truth has a way of walking through the same door. And when Marcus Reed stepped inside that morning, wet shoes, cold hands, and all, he did not just win a scholarship. He made a room full of people remember that respect should never be handed out after the truth embarrasses you. It should be there from the start. A month after the scholarship ceremony, Marcus was invited back to Maple Ridge Community Center as the youngest guest speaker in its history. This time, there was no rain, no whispers, and no one standing in front of the entrance. As he walked through the same doors, volunteers greeted him with smiles, and students asked for pictures with him. The place that had once questioned whether he belonged was now proudly introducing him as an example for every young person in the room. Director Harris welcomed everyone before stepping away from the microphone. Today, he said, "We are not here to celebrate perfect grades. We are here to celebrate perfect character." Marcus looked across the audience and noticed Emily sitting in the front row beside her mother. The woman in the red coat smiled nervously before giving him a respectful nod. Marcus returned the gesture without hesitation. When it was his turn to speak, Marcus did not begin with awards or success. Instead, he told the audience about the morning he stood outside in the rain. He described the silence, the fear of being judged before saying a single word, and the choice he had to make between anger and dignity. "I could have walked away," Marcus said. "I could have shouted back, but I wanted my actions to be louder than the accusations. That does not mean staying silent forever. It means choosing the right moment and the right words so people cannot ignore the truth." The room became completely still. Marcus continued, "Real change does not happen because one person wins an argument. It happens when people have the courage to admit they were wrong and decide to become better." Emily's mother slowly stood up from her seat. With tears in her eyes, she faced the audience. "I was that person," she said honestly. "I judged Marcus because of my own fears. He had every reason to hate me, but instead he gave me a chance to learn. I hope none of you ever make the mistake I made." The audience rose to their feet in a long-standing ovation. Marcus looked around the room and realized that the greatest victory was never the scholarship itself. The greatest victory was watching hearts change because one young man refused to let hatred decide who he would become.